Hey, what is up? Welcome to this episode of the Entrepreneur to Entrepreneur podcast. As always, I'm your host, Brian Lofermento, and this is the last guest episode of 2023. It has been such an amazing year with so many amazing guests, and I've been keeping this one in our pocket for a little while because I'm so excited about today's guest. He's fun. He has a very fun business. I love his branding. I love his mission. I love everything about what he's doing, and it comes after a career pivot. So he's got a really cool entrepreneurial story that's going to leave all of us fired up and inspired as we head into the new year. So let me tell you about today's guest. His name is Brent Newton. Brent is a first-time founder and three-time frustrated with homework management parent with one child in college, one in high school, and one in middle school. He has spent nearly 25 years focusing on sales, marketing, member retention, and customer relations on behalf of the financial services industry. Prior to that, he worked on developing capital markets in Latin American economies and promoting the importance of closer economic relationships with U.S. businesses and political leaders. You might be wondering, where's his entrepreneurial turn going to come? He's a longtime Little League volunteer, having coached at nearly every level from challengers to T-ball, all the way up to the highest levels of Little League play, which is near and dear to my heart because my own nephew plays T-ball in the Northern Virginia area, which is where Brent is based. He sits on the Arlington Little League board, has run the league-wide All-Star program, and is currently the player agent. And then this is where the entrepreneurial lightning struck. Brent's mission now is to help kids and their parents manage their homework by giving them the tool they need to focus on what is due and giving them the tool to make homework fun. Or as Brent says, at least a little bit more fun than usual. This is going to be a fun episode. I'm not going to say anything else. Let's dive straight into my interview with Brent Newton. All right, Brent, I am so excited that you're here with us in the last guest episode of the year. Welcome to the show.
Yeah, thanks, Brian. I mean, I'm excited, but now I feel a little pressure. Last show of the year. Okay, don't screw it up, right?
It's true. I don't remember what the first one was, but yeah, this is going to be, everyone always remembers the last one. Let's be honest. So the heat is on, but we're going to start with your backstory. I tease listeners a little bit about your bio and all the cool stuff that led you to where you are today, but give us that short version of your story because I love the twists and turns that your career has taken.
Yeah. So, I ask myself how I ended up where I am right now pretty much every day. So what it really boiled down to was me wanting to try to solve a problem that I was having in my own house. And it was these titanic struggles that we had with my kids. You mentioned I've got three, and we'd have these epic battles over homework. And the battle would go something like this. There's a parent app that we can use that tells us what their grades are. And I'd look at that every once in a while and I'd see one of them had an admittedly terrible grade. And so I'd say, hey, what's going on? This app here says your grade's pretty low. What's happening? And the response would be, oh, I don't know. Roll of the eyes, whatever. And so I'd open it up and take a look and see that they're missing 12 assignments and they're all zeros. And said, okay, well, so here's the problem. You have 12 missing assignments and they're all zeros. That might explain it. I don't have any missing assignments. I've turned them all in. Well, but it says right here, 0, 12 missing. What are we doing? Well, I don't know what to tell you. I have the worst teachers in the world. You can't possibly have the worst teachers every single quarter, every single semester, every single year. It's just not possible. So why don't you please open up your laptop, show me one of these assignments you've turned in so I can take a look and see what it is. So I'm sitting over her shoulder and she opens up the laptop and has to log in 2 different places and click 9 different times to get to that one assignment. I said, wait, hang on. Why'd you have to log in twice? Why'd you have to click 9 times just to get to that? That's just what we have to do. We do it for every assignment every day. So at that point, I'm thinking, okay, well, here's a problem in need of a solution. And that's when the change started to occur. Working at a think tank and then working at a trade association, thinking, well, but wait a minute, I can solve this problem for me and all the other parents like me who are having these same battles. So we called a friend of mine. My co-founder is now she's 12, my 12-year-old daughter. We can talk about that in a second if you want. We called a friend of mine who runs his own web design firm and digital marketing firm and started to pitch this idea to him. Within about 30 seconds, he pulls out a notepad and a pen and starts taking notes. When we're done, he says, listen, I get 3 to 4 calls every week that say, hey, I have this idea. It's going to change the world, and I need you to create the website. He said about 95% of the time, I have to go back to them and say, listen, I'll take your money, but it's not going to change the world. He said, but this one's a little bit different. He said, this could change the world. And now not only is he our IT partner, he's one of our early investors. So the pivot happened, and here we are.
Yes, I love that overview for so many different reasons, Brent. First of which is you're making me realize how much times have changed. You talk about seeing grades within an app. We used to have the luxury of bringing our report cards home, and we could decide, should I show my parents today? Should I wait a few days? So I guess you can't hide things these days. But I love that you looked at that. As a parent, you weren't just saying, hey, this is something that I'm facing. You actually, the entrepreneurial bug kicked in and you said, I'm going to solve this problem for a bunch of people. And that's the cool thing is a lot of great businesses are started out by scratching our own itch. And I think the added layer that, gosh, I love, you've got the youngest co-founder in our show's history. Talk to us about that, because I can only imagine at such a young age. I started my first business at 19. We're talking a very young age for your daughter. What's that been like? Because entrepreneurship, I think, is a vehicle that teaches us life lessons, not just business lessons, more so than most things we get to do in life. What has that journey been like?
So, I mean, you can partially, speak to this as a 19-year-old. What was it, what was different about your mind that made you want to go down this entrepreneurial path? And my daughter, who was 9 at the time, has always had that sort of entrepreneurial mind. I want to make slime for, a bunch of people and sell it online. Okay. All right, whatever. So there was a day we went out to visit some friends of ours who own a farm about an hour outside of DC. And it was about this time of year. And so she was wearing her little Santa hat, and she was in the middle of a field surrounded by cows, and desperately just wanted one of these cows to allow her to pet it. And she'd get close and it would move away, and so on and so forth. And I'm just big smile on my face watching the whole thing. And the next day she says to me, you know what, Daddy, I want a farm. So I said, okay, well, why don't you look online and see if you can find one for us? So she did. She found a farm out in the foothills of the Shenandoah Mountains. It had 100 acres. It had one of those infinity pools, $7.5 million. Doesn't mean anything to her. Doesn't mean anything to me either, because that's just ridiculous. So I said, well, that's a lot of money I don't have. So why don't we think about what we can do to come up with that money? And so she took her little notebook and she walked away, and she came back to me a little while later, and she'd written down some ideas. She could walk people's dogs. She could wash people's cars. She could babysit. And I said, okay, well, these are cute. These are great ideas, but we're never going to get to $7.5 million with that. We need to think a little bit bigger. And at that point is when we started having another one of these homework battles with her older siblings. And she actually said to me, what if there's something we could do there? And she is a badass. She has pitched this idea to her teachers. She's pitched this idea to principals, school board members, before a panel of judges at one of these sort of teen kid expo days where they have all these kids who come with their little business ideas. And she's out there pitching this to everybody. So she is pretty awesome.
Yes, I love that. Brent, you're making me realize 2024, we're having you and her on as well. I think we'd love to hear her perspective, truth be told, because there are so many things. You talk about, for me, I realized when I was 19, a lot of people talk about the mindset struggles of starting out a business. And some of those I can't really relate to, because at 19, I had no fear, partially because I had no risk of failure. If it didn't work, well, I was a college student. I was going to class every day. I had on-campus jobs. Really, I wasn't worried about that. I was also super delusional. I believed in my ability as a 19-year-old American kid to revolutionize the soccer media business. And that's what I was able to do because of that. Because of that, it's really naivety at that point, which works to your advantage at that age. So yeah, I think so many interesting things to think about there. I want to talk a little bit strategically about your business. So your business, it's called myOwl, so that listeners know. We'll talk about your website at the end. Getmyowl.com. I love that visual graphic of the owl because it's obviously so relevant to the educational space. But Brent, one thing that I think is interesting about your business is you talked about your daughter pitching all the different stakeholders, of which there are many. There's the students, the parents, the schools, the teachers. There's so many different parties involved. And one of the earliest lessons that I learned as a 19-year-old is who I serve is not necessarily my customer. I thought I was serving my website's visitors, but my customers were somebody else. And in my case, it was advertisers and sponsors. Talk to us about the mechanics of your business with so many different stakeholders and obviously the audiences that you want to serve. How does it strategically help you make decisions of, hey, here's how we not only serve those people, but here's how we grow a real business?
Yeah, that's a great question. And it's hard because there are all of those different stakeholders. And we sort of battled with the idea of like, who is our ideal client? Are we trying to help the students? And so the parents will pay a subscription fee for this? Are we trying to help the schools? Which is it? And at the end of the day, we wanted to, we have selected as our business model to have schools be our primary customer because we want to democratize this idea, right? We think this is an idea that everybody should have. We think this is a tool and a solution that everybody should have. And if we open it up to just parents through a subscription model, it would be those who can afford to pay for it. And so we would be, right, there's already a gap in learning. We don't want to further expand that gap. We want to democratize it, make sure everybody has access to it. So the customer is the school, but the ones who benefit the most from it are the students. Right. So I was listening to this presentation not too long ago by a woman named Nancy Duarte. I don't know if you know her, but she runs her own communications and presentation firm out in San Francisco. And if you look at her website, she has logos of all these different companies. She's been in business for a very long time, and all these different companies that she's helped throughout her career. And they're all the who's who of Silicon Valley, Apple, Cisco, all those people, right? And this presentation she was given was on storytelling and the importance of storytelling to whatever it is you're pitching, right? Presentation, pitching to investors, whoever. And her premise is that you should have, every story should have sort of a rise and fall cadence of what is, what could be, and a new bliss. So for us, focusing on students, the what is, let me ask you, I'm going to ask you a question, right? So you mentioned something about, when we were kids, right? So think back to when we were kids. Did you ever do bring home your textbook and you cut up one of those brown paper bags and you flip it on the inside, right, to make a cover for your book to protect it? Did you ever do that?
Of course, yeah.
Right. You had to. I couldn't do it now if my life depended on it. But man, I was a master of it when I was in school. Right? We had encyclopedias, we had Dewey Decimal System, all this stuff. Kids don't have that. It's all at their fingertips, their beck and call, right? Which sounds like a great idea, but is it, right? You can look at our assessments. So we are at a 25-year low in reading assessments. We're at a first ever decline in math assessments. And when you look at the international assessment, we are number 21 in the world. Any clue who number one is?
I'm going to guess China.
Yeah, it's a pretty good guess, and it's right? That ought to worry people a little bit, right? So here's another question I have for you. When you think about students and you think about what they have to do, they have these digital tools that they have to use to get all their work done. On average, a K through 12 student uses every year, how many digital tools would you say? 5 to 10? 10 to 25, 25 to 40? What would you say?
Yeah, my guess would be around a dozen or so. I'm thinking, okay. I'm hoping that graphing calculators are still in the mix, Brent.
Well, I think they are for some things, but if because they take your phones away from you in class now, so you can't use it for that. But the answer, and to be fair, full disclosure, digital tool can mean a lot of different things, right? So the laptop that the school issues to the kid or the iPad counts as a digital tool. Right, but so do all of the apps that they're given. So the answer is not 12; it's 143, and mind-boggling. Right, we have a school district we're working with. Their number is 397. Think about that for a second for your business or any business, right? So Brian, you've got 3 people. Well, I would say next week, but you already said this is the last of the year. So January 1, you've got 3 people. You've got 3 entrepreneurs you want to put on your podcast. Here are 143 different places you have to go to check out who might be a good fit for your program. Would you ever be able to maintain your business that way?
Yeah, I mean, literally, we'd run into a lawsuit, put us out of business.
Right, put you out of business. But that's what we do to kids every day, right? So like there's a big problem with that, right? So what we want to do is we want to create a dashboard where kids can go and everything is aggregated for them, right? So we use single sign-on, so there's not this question of signing on twice, like I mentioned my daughter had to do. We use integrations with these different EdTech apps to bring everything all in one place. So there are different tabs. So there's a tab for upcoming assignments. It lists the due date, it lists the details of the assignment, it lists the class, and then there's an icon for an EdTech app where that assignment is housed. You click on that icon, it takes you right to the assignment. There isn't all this other clicking and logging in and all that other stuff. Click once, take you to your assignment, you submit it, and then what happens is it moves from that upcoming assignments tab to a recently submitted tab with a grade of pending. So a lot of those battles I mentioned to you that I was having with my kids about missing assignments, they can just show me that it says pending. Give me the old mic drop and walk away, right? Because I've got 3 kids. I can barely manage them sometimes. Teachers are superheroes. I don't know how they manage 20 to 30 kids in a classroom all day long without losing their mind. I don't care when they grade the assignment. Just show me that it's been turned in, and that takes away a huge pain point for the kids and for their parents, right? So another big part of it that we do is try to help motivate the kids. Like, I'm never going to get my son to say, "Hey, Dad, I'm skipping Xbox today because I want to do my homework," right? No one ever does that. But what we've done is we've gamified homework. If you look at the engagement numbers, it's less than half of 5th through 12th graders feel connected to their homework, right? So, getting them to do their homework and gamifying homework is not going to change the world that way, but it might give them that little bit of extra incentive. So what we do is we give them points for turning in their homework. There's a part of me that hates this, I have to admit, right? It takes me back to this sort of PTSD days of giving my kids an M&M, 1 M&M for pooping in the toilet. Like, okay, great, good job, here's an M&M. But I admit that I fall prey to that, right? Like I drank the Peloton Kool-Aid, and I will do anything to get a 3-day in a row badge. Why? You don't know I got a 3-day in a row badge. Nobody knows I have a 3-day in a row badge, but I want it. It makes me feel good. So if we give them points, they can trade those points in for ways, different things they can use to personalize their dashboard. Different colored backgrounds, patterns of the backgrounds, different avatars, accessories for avatars. Who even knew that was a thing, but apparently it is. Emojis, stickers, badges, whatever you want. Ultimately, what we want to do is we want to create an online shopping mall where stores, retailers, restaurants, movie theaters, colleges, sports teams, right, can all put $5 gift cards into this store in exchange for X number of points, right? So everybody wins in this scenario, right? So the stores get to say they're furthering the education of today's youth. Nobody spends $5 at American Eagle Outfitters anyway. Students get this whole list of different stores they can trade in their points for just for doing their homework, right? So if it helps them motivate them just a little bit, then we're doing right by the kids, right? So that's kind of where we are with how we're helping the students. I can talk to the parents as well. We do on the website talk a little bit about teachers and schools. I don't know if we'll probably have enough time to get into that. But.
Yeah, one quick thing, I do want to go deeper into these elements, but one quick thing I want to call out for listeners, because I think it's such a strategic takeaway that is absolutely brilliant on your end, Brent, as someone leading the ship of the company, is it's something that you said in there about accessibility. And you and your daughter have asked yourselves, how do we make this accessible to all, so that, because everybody needs it, but not everybody would be able to afford it. So the way that you have very cleverly gotten around that strategic problem is the customers. I think every listener needs to take a lot of guidance from your brilliance on display here today is that it's really your ability to reach people and serve people is going to be dictated by the quality of your customer. So I want to make it clear for listeners, your customer, the ones who are paying the bills, are the schools. I think it's a really brilliant way to distribute your service. And Brent, I do want to cut in here because I think this is an important thing. I've been on a mission all through 2023. We've really talked about, I keep saying in air quotes, the real things of entrepreneurship. And I think part of those real things is we need to address uninformed optimism, because we've reached the point in the conversation where hearing you talk about your business, it's a total no-brainer. And anyone who's sitting here being like, well, Brent, that's it. You're sitting on a $100 million educational, innovative, revolutionary platform. Like, that's it. And they'll think it's easy. And newer entrepreneurs in particular fall into that trap of uninformed optimism, which I love the life cycle of optimism, because it goes from uninformed optimism to informed pessimism of, holy cow, this stuff is harder than I expected to make work. And then obviously then we ultimately make it to informed optimism. Brent, knowing that first step of the cycle is uninformed optimism, and also me and you both knowing this stuff is harder than it sounds, where are those stumbling blocks? Because truly, I believe you, everybody wins with myOwl, but it's obviously not so easy to get every school in America on board. Where's it get hard? Give us some insights into the hard stuff in this.
Wait, so how long is the episode? So yeah, there are a number of different stumbling blocks. I mean, and the first one, the primary one really is resources, right? And I'm not even necessarily referring to ours. In order for this to work, we have to integrate with all those different EdTech apps, right? So what we do is we approach a school, get them to work with us, have them send us a list of the apps that they use the most, and then we reach out to them to create these integrations. Now, the integrations themselves aren't particularly difficult to do, but they still need to be done. And a lot of times, like working with these other EdTech companies, they don't necessarily have the resources to help us create those integrations. And that really is the biggest stumbling block. The second one I'd say is And people, any of the entrepreneurs out there, founders out there who deal with schools and public schools, it's tough. I mean, the sales cycle for public schools is tough because you have to go through 143 different hoops, right? You have to get the IT people in the district to agree. Then you have to get procurement for the district to agree. Then you have to go to the superintendent, and you have to go to a parent, group. And there's all these different things that you have to do to get the okay and the approval to do it. We live in such a litigious society, right? There has to be all these, the privacy policies have to be in place, the security, like those are very legitimate things. It's just a lot.
So yeah, I definitely hear you on that. And I'm going to paint it. You talked about the litigious landscape. In my head, I'm just like, gosh, I hear bureaucracy. And so when I hear bureaucracy, one way that I, as an entrepreneur, we are the rule breakers, we are the rebels of society, I think about what are the various different ways around it. And part of what I'm thinking is there that gateway to have those advocates? And obviously, before I intervened, we were talking about parents. Part of me, with my marketing hat on, is I'm just like, can parents be those drivers within these school districts, within these communities? Talk to me about the ways to navigate that, because there's probably a million different paths to do so. And I know that obviously the parents are part of the equation. Brent, you're the parent who started this entire thing. So yeah, talk to us about that.
Yeah, no, you're right. So there are two things really. I mean, the first thing is changing who we're targeting initially, and we're looking to bring in private schools to work with us, to pilot this for us, give it to them, right? Here, take this, help us get this going. And because the private schools, this is facetious, but you just need to convince Bob. Whoever Bob is, you just need to convince Bob. I don't need to go through the IT department, the procurement department, the superintendent, the list of parents. You just have to get Bob to say yes, and you're good, right? So that's not entirely true. Tongue in cheek, please. But the idea is that you don't necessarily have the bureaucracy that you do with local and state governments. That's number one. The other side of it is that we are trying to do exactly what you're saying, is get the parents to advocate for us. So we are starting this grassroots campaign. We just launched a brand new website, and on there is a way for people to sign up. We call it a waiting list, a petition, whatever you want to call it, but it's a way for people to put their name on a list saying that they would like this solution in their school. And that way we can then go to schools and say, hey, we have 50% of your school, or we have 25 people in your school, whatever that number may be, who are interested in this solution. You want to take a look at it. Let me show you how it works. And so we're trying to start this sort of viral grassroots campaign to get as many people signed up as possible. It's not a spam. I hate spam. I hate all those emails. This is not that. It's really to show schools, these are the people who have expressed interest in this product. It's not even these are the people. I'm not going to tell them who they are. I'm going to say there are 100 people in your school district who want this. So we're using private schools and parents to really start to push this for us.
Yeah, I love that. And again, I'm going to paint this picture because I always love those call outs for listeners. They might be on the go. This really stems from Brent understanding the landscape of it. When you talk about private schools, yes, here we are again. I framed the question as going around the bureaucracy, and you nailed it, because you showed us that there always are those different ways. And your illustration of just find the Bob, that's going to be a new business strategy that I'm going to echo here on the podcast in 2024. Find the Bob. You've identified who the Bob is, that low-hanging fruit. So I absolutely love that perspective from you. I want to ask you about growth plans, because anytime I ask entrepreneurs about this, there's so many different ones. I don't ask this question often, but with you, I think that one, I don't know if you identify as this, Brent, but you are a tech company. So I think that's really powerful in your space as a tech company. But two, it's a really industry revolutionary company. It's a really different solution that's out there. And you talk about funding, you talk about getting market penetration, all of these different options. I see you guys as being huge. I'm excited for the day that your daughter gets to take over as CEO already to replace you, Brent. But what are those growth plans? How far forward are you looking?
Well, so first of all, I just want to make sure that whoever Bob is out there, I don't want you to be offended by us thinking of you as low-hanging fruit. So please, Bob, let's talk. The growth plans are I think we want to try to be modest initially, right? We want to try to get 3 to 5 schools, 3 to 5 districts in the next 3 to 6 months who are willing to pilot with us and really get that going, so that by the start of the next academic year, so fall of 2024, we're ready to push this out to people. We can show people. Part of it is that we want to be able, that sort of bliss that I talked about in the beginning, that Nancy Duarte talked about, the bliss in all of this is that, what we're trying to do is to give a tool to kids that will help them improve their grades, right? So what we need data to show that. We need time to be able to show, okay, well, they went into this year or this semester with these grades and they improved by this amount, whereas they only improved by this amount a year ago. I want to be able to show that to schools. Once we can do that, then I think we take the reins off. And I agree with you. I mean, there are these stats out there that show you that, if you get X percentage of the market, you're doing really well. And the number is like single digits. It's really low. Maybe this is the uninformed optimism you talked about, but I'm looking at this as, I don't see why everybody wouldn't want this, because it helps everybody. It helps every student in your school district or your school. It helps every parent. Think about all the calls you're not going to get at a school from a parent who wants to know what's going on, right? So that to me is sort of where we want to go. There are 56 million K through 12 kids in the US. We want them all. And then after that, we can move to, plans to move internationally, plans to move to higher education. So I am not a glass half full guy, but when it comes to this, I'm 100% full. I'm excited.
Yeah. And I'm going to add to that, because I don't even think it's just glass half full. What I'm really hearing is, my favorite book in the world is The Magic of Thinking Big. It's by Dr. David J. Schwartz. And so much of that book not only talks about the mindset stuff that we face in any endeavor, not just business and entrepreneurship, but really anything in life is it's more dangerous to think small. So hearing your perspectives on it, I think when we all look back, a year from now, 5 years from now, 10 years from now, and people are like, holy cow, look at what myOwl has been able to do. It's really these building blocks of you thinking big. That's the only reason. You're always going to be limited by how big of questions you ask, how big you're thinking. So yeah, I think it's really cool that you share that perspective and those real inner thoughts with us here on the air. Brent, I want to transition a little bit as we come towards the end of today's session, because I think it's so fascinating, your professional background. Obviously, connections, relationships are an important part of your own journey. And you come from the financial services world. Now, again, coming into the tech world, coming into the education space. Show us those, because I always think that all this stuff, we're being uniquely prepared for things that probably we don't even know what's coming. What are some of those ways that it's just struck you as you're growing myOwl that you've been like, wow, I was being prepared this whole time for this without ever even knowing it?
Yeah, it's funny. I was thinking about a similar type question, and I'm not one who necessarily believes in fate or destiny or any of those kinds of things. But you look back on your career and you think, that's interesting. Everything I did with that job has perfectly positioned me for myOwl and what we're trying to do. And so you hit the nail on the head there. It's I think one of the things you talked about, one of the things I've done a lot in my career has to do with connections. And I think that one of the things that we have lost in today's society is how to make a really good and genuine connection. And when you have had the career that I have and the things that I've had to do over the years, the right kind of connection is the difference between success and failure. And for me, the importance of trying to make, I don't want a superficial connection. I want something I'd rather have a quality connection than quantity. Like I look at my kids and all their social media and there's, I've got 982 followers. I don't even know 982 people. You can't possibly have a connection with all those people. So what I have learned over the years is how to develop those relationships and how to not just ask somebody to go to the myOwl website and sign up, but what can I do, Brian? What can I do for you? How can I help you? There's that give and take, that back and forth that I think I really honed over the years that has really put us in a good position.
Yeah, I love that. For me, it's probably, we're all on our own growth journeys. We're all on our own we grow in a maturity phase. I think that that's something that I didn't understand early on in my entrepreneurial career is that word, maturity. It's such a weird concept when you're young because you think you're great at things because we're better than older people at technology. We're quicker at getting things, all of those things. Yeah. But maturity is a real thing. And Brent, I think the biggest thing for me that I've learned is that maturity oftentimes means, yeah, you're right, eliminating things in order to gain things. I talk to about 5 people. As social and extroverted as I am, and I talk to people for a living, there's only so many relationships that we can take in our lives, and it really is about going deep there. So I think that's such an important perspective for you to share with us here today. With that in mind, Brent, we talked about so many different things, and I mean it when I say, listeners, if you really enjoyed Brent today, I'm going to peer pressure him as best as I can to get him and his daughter on in 2024. But Brent, with all of those things that we talked about here today, what's your best advice for entrepreneurs? Speaking not only as someone who's leading in a tech and an education company, but talking entrepreneur to entrepreneur with the thousands of people who are tuning in here today. What's your best advice for them with all the things that you've learned, all the things that you've seen, your own maturity along the way professionally? What's your advice?
Well, I'm glad you think I'm mature. That's one of us.
Hey, Brent, I said maturity journey. We're all on an ever expanding journey.
That's fair. That's fair. Thank you for the clarification. I would say, don't look at rejection as a bad thing. Rejection is actually a good thing. Had you asked me that, I think it was 8th grade, guys have it. It's terrible, right? Like I know I just offended everybody, but it's so hard to get up the courage to ask a girl out. 8th grade, I asked this girl, I really wanted to go out with this girl, take her to this, 8th grade dance or whatever. And she said no. And I was devastated. And who knew that in 8th grade, that rejection helped me build, like you talk about what helped you to where you are now, that rejection helped me. But rejection isn't a bad thing. Rejection is an opportunity. Rejection is something that allows you to look at what you're doing, what you're saying, what you're presenting, and take a step back and see if you can improve it, right? So I've had conversations, we've talked to tons of people, parents, school people, other entrepreneurs, EdTech people about myOwl. And, you get past the part where your mom or your loved ones are like, oh, honey, it's so great what you're doing. And it feels good, but you're looking for someone to actually give you some help. And I was talking to this guy, and he's helped a lot of entrepreneurs. And he said, well, first of all, I hate the name. And I just started laughing. And I said, thank you so much. And he was confused because I think he expected me to be offended. I mean, I didn't change the name. I still love the name. But the fact that he was honest with me and gave me that piece of advice that some would view as rejection, I thought was a great thing. So take those rejections in stride and use them as a tool to build from.
Yeah, really powerful advice, especially because one of the lessons that I learned this year is, it's a quote that I'm totally going to botch. So I'll just say the premise of it is, if you're looking for strength, then you'll face challenges. And those are the ways that we get that strength. We can't just aim to wake up tomorrow as strong. And for us as entrepreneurs, it is those rejections. I think it's the rejections. I think it's the reps of us showing up and doing things. I've done 700 some odd interviews. So when people say to me, oh, you're natural, I'm just like, go listen to episode 1. Like, I was terrible at this. And speaking of our own maturity growth journey, like, I'm continuing to get better through those reps, through failing, through rejections, through good interviews, through bad interviews. So all of that. So I think that's really profound advice, Brent. And I'm so grateful that you shared that with our listeners here today. I know that personally, I'm excited to follow your own business journey from here, and listeners are going to be super keen to check out your website as well as follow your own entrepreneurial journey. So drop those links on us, Brent. Where should listeners go from here to learn more about all the great work you're doing with myOwl?
Awesome. Well, first of all, thank you for having me. This was super fun. I can tell you that you don't need to push very hard. I think my daughter would love to join us on another episode in 2024. So we'll make that happen, and we can connect on a couple of different places. You mentioned the website, getmyowl.com. Please go. Please sign up on the waiting list, petition, whatever you want to call it. Brian, I expect to find your name on there. I expect to find your brother's name on there. And you can also find me on LinkedIn. It's just Brent-Newton-myOwl. So look forward to connecting with a lot of you out there.
Yes, listeners, you already know the drill. We are making it as easy as possible to check out myOwl as well as to connect with Brent personally. So scroll right on down wherever it is that you're tuning into today's episode for all those links and more. And yes, for sure, you're going to see my name on that list as well as my brother's name. I think it's such powerful and influential work that you're doing. So Brent, I'm a big fan of what you and your daughter are up to. I'm excited to see that the entire Wantrepreneur to Entrepreneur community is going to be following your journey from here. So thank you so much for coming on today and sharing all of this with us here today.
Thanks, Brian. Appreciate it.